Welcome back, everyone, to episode 11 of the Rise Up Together podcast. Here we have the pleasure to be with Austin Florek, a transformational coach and author. So, Austin, could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, hey guys. My name is Austin, and I am an intuitive entrepreneur. I am currently working on a project called the Lucid Path, which guides people through and out of addiction, helps people master their emotions and then find their purpose in life.
Awesome. Yeah, so what made you, if you mind me asking, what made you interested in pursuing addiction? Is there any like personal story you're willing to share or just, yeah, what got you interested?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so personally, I have been addicted to basically every kind of substance. And I've gotten myself over every single one of those addictions from like literally hard drugs to nicotine to caffeine. I don't take any of those things anymore. So by doing that, I've really developed a strength mindset, a way to be able to, you know, because I have done that, I could see myself being able to persevere through other obstacles, with resilience, and it's been a big change for my life, of improvement, and I just want to be able to share that with other people as well because I just know it's super beneficial, and I mean, not to mention, people are like dying from drug use, so if we could get that out of the way, that would be super cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's kind of like this idea of, turning pain into purpose, which is really powerful. And it seems like that's kind of like something you like want to do. I know you mentioned you're an author. Could you talk a bit more about that and yeah, what you're doing there?
Yeah. So the book is called As If by Magic, um, by Lucy Kobier and 8 other authors, including myself. And so basically, the book's premise is to explain how people have overcome situations or have created things in their life, through using their intuition. So, to dive into that a little bit more is to like be able to tune in beyond the mind and kind of see like be led by the heart and to be led by, some people say spirit or God or the universe, to be able to really tune into that and see what is here for us. Like what is our soul's blueprint? What does our soul and our heart want us to create, basically? Um, and so, yeah, we all shared stories about that. And I actually shared about how I overcame addiction and how I, was able to like get to certain places in my life by using my intuition.
Mm. Yes, from what you're like describing, it seems like from a lot of people who have been through that I know who've been through like their own stories of addiction or mental health struggles, a lot of like the key ideas at the end come back to like this idea of like finding your breath in breath work and spiritual practices. Seems like it's related to like what you were talking about with intuition, but I'm wondering like how does one like practice this skill or get better at kind of like being present or and like relying and being intentional kind of in their lives, if that's kind of like what you were talking about. I'm just curious what you were thinking there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think about this a lot, but today I actually had a thought come to me that was, we all have like an inner dialogue. We all have like a way that we feel things should be. Not based on ego, like not the way we think things should be based on what we've been taught and programmed to be, but the way that like our heart and our soul wants us to express things. And so when we feel a certain way inside, we want to create that on the outside. In fact, that's always happening. Our insides are like directly related to what is happening outside of us. Some know it as the phrase, as within, so without, or as above, so below. Um, but to actually be able to tune into that is really just about getting quiet and being able to listen to what our heart says beyond all of the noise, beyond, like specific reactions that people have are just like programmed, but there's like just something beyond even our reactions where things can just happen and they can flow. And when you can find that place, then you can start to flow and move in the direction of what your heart actually would love for you.
Hmm. That's yeah. I mean I relate a lot to like kind of that what you were just saying in that I was like struggling with my own things like I was in a depression and like just like kind of like I actually wrote a post about this on like my school community, kind of like this idea of surrendering um your like weight to the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. It's different for everyone, right? But it's kind of like this idea of like who knows what we even really can control, right? And just like I don't know, you just gotta like like love your being and it's kind of like also like what I think about this culture of fear and how we all live. We live as if like we live as if we were never going to die. It was like a cool video I saw. And like we all just live in fear and like what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, but it's just so important to stay grounded and understand that there's like a flow of life and I don't know. I personally think like there's a lot of things that are just connected, like the breath similar to like the waves of the ocean, and I don't know. What are your thoughts on? I'm curious what you think about like the connection between everything in the universe or like surrendering your way to like a higher power or whatever. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's, at least for me, it's relatively a new idea of like this concept, but I feel like it's the way to go. So I don't know. Yeah, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I really like what you said about the breath or like the waves of the ocean. And really uh I think that everything kind of has an ebb and flow, and that's just like, you speak about the breath, but it's also like our emotions. Our emotions and our thoughts come and go, and sometimes we have emotions that make us feel good, and then they're followed by emotions that don't feel so good, and we just kind of go in this wave. And it's not to say that any of these emotions are good or bad, just because they might feel a little more dense or they feel uncomfortable in their bodies. It doesn't make them bad to have. It's just about how are you using that energy when it comes through. Like you may have that feeling of, depression or anxiety, and it kind of like sits in your body in a weird way, but it's like, okay, now that you have that, what is it actually related to in your life? What is causing this, or why are you experiencing this based on your perception of the event that's happening? And when you can discover that, that's actually, you can use that as fuel to start to change your life into a way that feels better for you. And
Hmm.
you can also use that energy to, like, for some people, they'll say like they get the best art or the best music when they're in pain, and it's because they're learning to channel those denser emotions into something that feels good that can be used as like jet fuel to propel them. Um, to answer your question, because I wanted to speak on that first about like surrendering to a higher power. Yeah, totally. How do I say this? I think for me personally, I think that we all have like our own blueprint, just like our fingers or our fingerprint are all different, snowflakes are all different. We all have our own blueprint, and it kind of makes us unique in how we share. And, I think that the higher power is kind of like how does everything come together, and where does my puzzle piece fit into the collective that is helping everybody grow? And just to give an example of that is like yesterday I was on a call with someone, and she was sharing somatic work with me on how to heal the nervous system. And I told her that, because of the work that we're doing, I feel more open and less stressed out to be able to share my story in public places like on Facebook and stuff. So she's helping me heal, and I'm using my story to help other people heal. So it's like we're coming together to help everybody grow and ascend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and kind of like this idea of like we need each other to grow, and we all offer what something like is so basic to you that might seem like such a simple skill could be such a big deal for someone else, and like vice versa for other people. I've noticed, and I was like thinking about when you were talking, just like how like the ebb and flow of emotions. I think about just like kind of like the commercialization of mental health nowadays, and like this idea of like it's kind of like there's a bit of like a idea of like it's not okay to like feel upset kind of, and like not like in a way of just like when people are depressed, like it's like that's like an emotion you can't feel, it's wrong. And obviously there's like some cases where it's very severe and like you do need to get it treated, but I was also like even for cases where you are depressed, I would like someone used this quote that I thought was really fascinating and empowering, was just like we're addicted to our own suffering, we're giving all this energy to like feeling like I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, that's becomes our identity that we attach ourselves to and we live by. However, instead, there might be a better way to go about all this, and it all comes back to when I think about it, thinking about like the motives of those involved in mental health care as well, because not everyone has the truest intentions. Money is a big thing, right? And like, if in all honesty, people are going to try to use people. It's the easiest way to make money, right? If you're like on a path to take advantage of people in vulnerable situations. So that's why this becomes like a very big topic to think about. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts like what I was just saying, or if like it resonates with you at all, especially when you were going through like addiction and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Actually, what you were just talking about with like um it's bad to feel depressed, you know. So what that reminds me of is like toxic positivity. You know, like a lot of people just want to pretend to put on a happy face and pretend like everything is going well, even though inside they're like dying. Like, because they haven't let themselves feel that emotion basically. And so what it comes down to, in my opinion, is about being able to accept the fact that like, okay, I feel this way right now. Like this is okay for me to experience this emotion. It's totally okay. This is natural. Like a lot of people feel these emotions, and it's just depending on if you're in that state, it's because you have a belief that something in your world is causing this, or that something inside of you is causing this, But like if you can just understand that this is an emotion, and I have to say this first, that what you resist persists. So like if I have a feeling of depression and I'm trying to get rid of it, I'm trying to everything I can to steer myself away from the depression. I don't want to look at it. What that's doing is reinforcing the depression, because I'm saying that this has power over me and that I need to like do something to change my state. For me, it was drugs. Like I don't want to feel this depression, so I'm going to go self-medicate so that I can feel better. But I don't have like you don't have to do that. It's just okay to feel that emotion and accept it in, accept the situation for what is actually occurring, and then like letting it pass, Radical acceptance basically is what I think is the answer to that.
Yeah. And then I think like my thoughts are I think there's like different cases I feel like where it can become more extreme. But it could like it starts to develop that way because of like not really having this radical acceptance in the first place, I feel like. And then when you thought like you brought up this idea, toxic positivity, and it makes me think about kind of like what I was doing before. Like I run my brand at Rise Up Riseman, which is like used to be, actually rebranded it, but it used to be like advocating for mental health and building inclusive communities, like hashtag positivity ripple effect. And it kind of was me like promoting this toxic positive, not just like good content, positive content, which isn't bad, but I wasn't being truly authentic, I guess, in the way I was promoting content because I was always just putting on this positive, um, like persona on. And in a way, like this content's still great to put people on, but I thought it needed to be more authentic. And to do that, there really should be a focus more on kindness rather than positivity because you can still be kind when you're at very low points and still be authentic and like even inspire people when you're even at those darker places. So that was kind of like something I was thinking about with toxic positivity that came to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And what you're saying too about sharing kindness also has that ripple effect, because someone could be down in the dumps having a bad day and someone comes along and shares some kindness with them. I mean, dude, that'll light anybody up. Like, oh man, you just came out of your way to show love to me. You didn't have to do that. Like, it just is like reinforcing that there is positivity in the world, even though like it's okay to be down in the dumps and have a bad day. It's like if someone came along and cheered you up, that's that's not toxic positivity. That's like a genuine, authentic, tender love and care. That's the good stuff right there.
Yeah, no, good point. And I think there's just like at least the way I guess it still impacts others in like a good way still, but I'd rather like personally be more authentic kind of with the way I would want to promote like stuff. So instead of like having to be positive person, like just rather just being like just always being a kind person, which is something you can control much more easily even when you're at lower points and still like when you're kind, you're kind of like this light to other people and lifting them up and a shout out like rising up together. That's like my group name, but
Yeah,
yeah, so that's just some cool thoughts there. Yeah.
yeah, that's super cool, man. So, with Rise Up Riseman, what encouraged you to start that?
Yeah, so at least for me, I'd say it was I started it with no intention of any sort of money or just like trying to like promote good content in the world, kind of like seeing like go to school in Rochester. It's always so snowy. Everyone's like so depressed there. So I'm like, why not like put out some good content? We kind of just this relates like to like the entrepreneurial spirit. Once you start, like that mindset just shifts and you start seeing opportunity instead of fear with things. And that's something I really love about entrepreneurship. In that you're seeing possibilities rather than your future being like fearful, unknown. You're living from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. So that's like a big thing that impacts all aspects of your life. So that is kind of like why I started in my own personal struggles, and from there, you can see the progress. And it just makes me think of a question to you regarding like how is your because I know you mentioned, I believe you worked like kind of like a traditional 9 to 5 job before and like we didn't really enjoy that kind of route. So you're just like, fuck it, like I'm gonna go all in on my entrepreneurial pursuits and go for it. I'm wondering like for you, how could you describe the journey thus far and what like stage you think you're at and all that cool stuff?
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Um, okay, yeah, so I was working at Chipotle around this time, I think last year. Um, and I was making burritos for people, and I wanted to level up, and I wanted to level up really bad because I didn't, I guess I felt small in that position, which anybody who's making burritos out there at Chipotle, it's not about that, it's not, it's okay to be where we're at. But for me, I felt like my programming wanted me to think that I needed to expand and I needed to do something more, and so I was chasing bigger things because I thought that those successes meant more validation and more worthiness for myself. Um, which is not true. Like, so basically what I'm trying to say is because I was there, I did everything that I could to become a manager, right? And so when I became a manager, I actually skipped one of the manager ranks and went straight up to the next one. I just like I jumped 2 levels super fast because I just was like I was on it. But once I got there, I realized I still just was unhappy. I just didn't like the job. I just didn't like having to report to other people for my money. Like, and another thing that I bring up, and it's kind of funny to me, but every time I would put on a hat for someone else. Like I always felt like their logo being on the hat was like they're putting their mind control over top of me. Now I have to operate at their programming that they gave me using my brain for their programming, and no shade on Chipotle, I eat there all the time, but just the 9 to 5 um path in general was just kind of how that felt. And so, I really just desired to create my own brand. And in fact, like this is one of the things that I did was create drop shipping. So I've made like t-shirts. I actually created my own brand and clothing. Um, and then, you know, I kind of went through a couple ups and downs with life, but um overall I found that my purpose is to be able to share like about my path and the things that I've learned through my struggles, and how I can package that up and give it to other people, and and give it to them and to encourage them and to help them grow too. Just yeah, it's just the whole heart of that is
Yeah.
was just more intriguing to me, inspirational. There's just more love there, you know.
It's interesting perspective from like, and thanks for sharing that. When I had some like thoughts that came to mind when you shared that all is because like the way you described it, like working at Chipotle, like at its core, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like if that aligns with your values, your personal values, you making enough money to live comfortably, like some people enjoy that lifestyle. Like I had an Uber driver who she wakes up at 3 a.m. She loves like the individual like thing you can do, and not many people would necessarily say that like driving Ubers there would lead to like a life they love living. But this lady like really liked it. And so it's important, like what you talk about, to living like the way I see it, living in like alignment to kind of like your personal values, who you are. Because some people don't want to be like the face of like a company or start their own thing and like be creative. Because that's like not what they value. Like they'd rather like a more simple, structured kind of lifestyle where like everything's kind of like you know what you're going in for, right? Like when you work at Chipotle, it's like you know what you're gonna get up, you know what you're doing every day, right? You're gonna go there, you're gonna like make the burritos and do all the work there. It's a pretty similar day, I assume, every day you work, right? And like at least myself, I'd probably get, which seemed like might have been the case for you, like I just get burnt out of kind of like that kind of constant cycle of just doing the same thing, and there's no room to like elevate or grow or develop. I guess you could like from like a customer service standpoint, like making sure you're doing better with like the quality of everything, but it's kind of like you're just doing the same thing, which is
Mhm.
I don't know, I feel like I'm more of like a adventure, like want some more like novel stuff and constantly seeking, being curious and seeking some unknown. And I'm wondering if that's like from your experience there at working at Chipotle, if you'd say that there were people there that you think like were content with the lifestyle, like it just like fitted them well. They were like they had a family maybe or something, and they just like they knew what they weren't trying to go for anything more, but they were rather just like at peace where they were working there. So I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it kind of reminds me of while I was there, I heard that there was like Chipotle was developing an AI or a robot or something to like do one of the operations that they hire customers for. And like if you think about it, man, the way that I consider it is like I'm not AI. Like I'm not a robot. Like I don't want to do the same things over and over again. Like, that just is so redundant. Like I don't even like to go to bed at the same time every night. I'm just a human. Like I like you said, I like adventure. I like to experience new things day in and day out. And um there was one more piece to this. Where's it at? Um oh yeah, and that really relates to also what you were talking about with like living in the scarcity mindset or the abundance mindset, because or living in fear or living from a place of, faith, really, to know that like if I'm doing the same thing every day and I have that stable income, yada yada, like okay, sure, that's the safe route. You're gonna get what you need no matter what. It's just there, but at the price of what? Like for me, I was giving away too much of myself for that stability to live in that fear mindset. And on the entrepreneurial journey, there's much more room for creativity, expansion, joy. Like there's so much more fun that can be had. You just have to have some faith in yourself. You just have to be able to put yourself out there and like some people aren't going to get it. Some people aren't going to like what you do. That's okay. There are going to be so many people who do get it and who do like what you do that it makes it worth it. And I think that you actually wrote a comment about this the other day, like if 400 people dislike the thing that I did, but I helped one person, you were successful, you know?
Yeah, that's like that really speaks to like what your true intentions are for like kind of what you're doing. And if you're like this really famous entrepreneur, Jesse Itzler, I really like, who he always is like, you are the business plan, like people buy into people's stories and momentum. So like sharing your story is like there's like a price attached to that too, like money wise as well. But what he always says is like if you really want to be like a successful entrepreneur, you have to like start really like not giving a shit what people say. If you value what you're doing and it's like if you like it, put it out there. Like it's that simple, and you will get like you may get like a lot of backlash, but it's at least for myself like throughout this journey, like at first like I really did, like everyone says they don't care what people think. And it's like most people I feel like do to some extent, like from a biological standpoint, but like at this point now, I really genuinely like don't care too much what people really think. Like, and I like genuinely mean that. Like I'm fine just being myself. I'd rather live a life full of authenticity and meet the people that are meant for me rather than living in fear. Um, and that might mean your circle grows smaller. And for myself, like I'm kind of a bit of a people pleaser, it was. So it's interesting to see like things shifting in that way, but it's just I feel like that's the right way to go. And I wonder like have you had any similar experiences with that since you've like started your school group or whatever yeah, like being an author, like anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally, man. It's actually that's funny. That's actually something I'm moving through right now. In fact. And yeah, at like a certain level, especially when it's like your own family and stuff, it's like I don't want people to see me in a bad light. And that could be my people pleaser aspect too, because I am also guilty of that. I don't want anybody to see me in a bad light, but like if people aren't willing to look or aren't willing to see what you're doing, okay, like I can only share or explain so much before it's like, well, if you're committed to not understanding, that's fine. Go ahead. I'm not gonna try to change you. I can only share with you what I'm doing, and if you just don't like it, like fine. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna go chasing anybody around to try to resolve that conflict. It's all good, Um,
Yeah.
and this
Uh,
kind of actually, I wanted to ask you a question earlier, and this kind of comes back to that. So, like, if you have experienced this, would you mind talking about that? And then also, how this kind of ties together too. How do you cope with emotions that come up for you? What is something that you do to actually channel those energies as they're coming up? And perhaps if you've experienced something like that, how do you tie that together?
yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about like in regards to sorry, I'm losing my train of thought right now for a second. What were we just talking about again? I'm just blanking a bit. We were talking about people pleasing, right? And all that.
Yeah, people pleasing.
Yeah, so it's like living in like the way I see it is like kind of this like topic of like authentic abundance, and it's like a skill you get better at, and the more you really just step into your authentic self and your light, you start to really just like you really develop a confidence in who you are that's not like fake in a way because you're like open, and that's like the power of like at least for myself, I feel like being open on social media is really scary, but it's also just it makes you free in that there's really nothing that holds you back and you can just be yourself, be free, and people start to gravitate towards that more. I feel like you become more of a charismatic person and more of just like people like really like your story, like how you're just truly out there because like it's all just there's so many filters out there and people just like full of it and like the corporate world and all these different things and like And it's just people want at its simplest core, like people want to connect with others, and you can't really do that in like a work environment to too much of an extent because everybody's just like out to like not out to get you, but they don't care about you, in my opinion, from what like from a like you'd be you they can sacrifice you like this. Like I actually had an experience which really changed my perspective on this is like I was working at like this I don't want to say like where because I don't want to get into any trouble or anything, but like I was like one of the best employees, like they would agree. And then there was just like this minor little incident which really didn't do much, but I was actually fired from that for that. What and like it just shows you just like you don't matter at these corporations and you're so replaceable. You're a nobody at the end of like even if you're say you're a software engineer at like Google or Amazon, you're still just a replaceable person, a cog in a machine. And I personally don't want to live my life like that. I'd rather be the machine. That's what they say, right? Create your own machine. And that's what we're both like trying to do. And it's much harder. It's difficult to really like step outside and be an outsider. But but it's the way to go because you're living a life in which you are not replaceable as like a human. Like you built something and it's and you made that. And I think that's like a lot of people want to live that lifestyle and a lot of people can't too much because like there may be like financial issues or it would be tough to really have the time to go into that. I guess anyone really can if you like think about it in a way in which you like can make something you can just work on a bit that doesn't really cost you any money or capital to like put down, but rather it just like would take a long time to grow out. But yeah, it's just like those are kind of like my thoughts that I think about. And to answer like your question regarding coping with all this stuff, it's definitely a journey to like go through that, but I think it's well worth it. The more you do because it's just like the way Alex Ramosi always puts it is like you can either have like maybe what 2 to 3 years or so of just like really going through the fire, the flame and really struggling and then like learning so much more about yourself as you do through the journey, which is far more valuable than like the work experience itself too. I'm sorry I'm going on a lot of tangents, but I think like the process through like kind of like your own pursuits is like teaches you so much, and I think that's why a lot of these people who are like really successful would like have made like 9 companies that like 8 failed, and then like because they keep going because they know that like regardless of if they're like successful or not, they know they're growing through learning in the process. And it's something you don't really understand, I feel like, before you until you really embark on your own journey. And it makes you more of like a curious and open person, like not being too judgmental to other people rather. And I feel like there's a lot of that. Like I just think of like a simple example. I think about just like religion in general, right? Like there's so much corruption in a lot of different things that it's just like if you just look at like people like who love like Jesus or something like that, right? Like there's people like just from hearing that, there will be people who will get like really irritated, really mad. But at its simplest core, like when you really like look at it, isn't Jesus just about like love and peace? And I'm not even like a really religious person or anything. I just think about it from like that perspective and like also like MrBeast as well. What he does is he gets so much hate. Meanwhile, he like has helped so many people on such like on a national worldwide level, but people would rather like see him travel to like $100,000 island rather than helping a bunch of blind people because he's being selfish. But if he's being selfish or not, it doesn't really like does it even matter? He's still helping the people. So just went on a bit of a tangent there, wondering if yeah, do you have any thoughts to anything I just said?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One thing that stood out for me, bro, is that we are making this happen. We're not trying. We're putting this down, bro. 100%. And yeah, and something else that you said too, or something that I related to was I don't remember who it was, but he said like, okay, whenever I buy out a company and because they're failing or whatever, the first thing that they do is fire the CEO or like fire like the top dude in charge. And like and that just goes to show you that like it literally does not matter what level inside of the company you are. Like you are just a number. Like you're just a stat to them, and that's I man, I just can't do that. I just can't do that. Like when I put my heart and my soul into something, that is something that AI cannot replicate. That is something that these robots coming out just cannot replicate. Like they cannot capture the human spirit and the essence of what we put into this stuff, you know? Um, and so I just think that that's just so important to recognize. And um, yeah, bro. I just want to encourage you because I see you out here doing your thing. You're doing awesome. I really uh appreciate the group that you're building, the community that you're building over there on school. Rise up and yeah, so I would just encourage everybody who is watching, if you aren't already, to go check that out. It's a very unique space. It's very open and honest and straightforward, and there's no toxic positivity involved. So, yeah, all good stuff, man. I really appreciate you sharing that stuff with me today.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to talk on here. And I know Austin runs a group on school as well. We'll link all the details below to some like resources and stuff. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and have a good one.
Yeah, right on, guys. Take care.